Hey everyone, how's it going today? In this video, I'm going to be showing you the basic data types in the C programming language. So to start off, I will just make a simple program called data.c, and I will include the header file stdio.h, and I will make a main right there called int main void. So the first data type I want to go over with you is called an integer right there. So an integer is a data type that stores whole numbers. So for example, we'll take the number pi, 3.1415. You would use what's called a float to store that value right there because it's a real number. So for integers, you want to store whole numbers. So you would store 3, 4, 5, 6. You would store that in an integer data type. You can also store negative whole numbers in an integer data type. So I can say -3, -4, -5. You want to put that in an integer right there. All right, cool. So let's see this integer data type in action right there. I'll say I have an int. I'll make a variable called age, and I'll store an integer data type, and I'll say 22. Okay. So when you're making a variable in C, you need to specify the data type. So in this case, an integer. So you got to use this keyword int right there, and then the variable age, and then it's 22. Then I'll say int days equals 23, int month equals 12, and int year equals 1994. All right, cool. Then we'll show this in action right here. I'll just have a simple printf. I'll say my age is %d, and this placeholder right here. In order to placehold the integer data type, you need this. You can use a %d or %i. I prefer %d, but it's either one will do the job. I'll show you the %i later in this tutorial. But I'll say my age is %d. I was born on %d. The month was %d, and the year was %d. And then we'll pass all these values right there. I'll include this n right here, and I'll say age, days, month, year. All right, sweet. So that's all right. So all these integers are going to be passed in this printf function right here. So we'll see it in action. We'll compile it and hope everything runs correctly. We'll say make data, and it didn't compile correctly. Why is that? Printf. Because I didn't spell it correctly. That's why. We'll see it. Here we go. Make data, compile correctly. All right, sweet. So everything came out just as we expected it to. My age is 22. I was born on 23. The month was 12. The year was 1994. So you see that. Just keep in mind when you're gonna store the values in the integer data types. Make sure it's a whole number. You don't want to put decimal numbers in the integer data type. I'll show you what you would want to store decimal numbers in right now. Is what's called a float. So I'll write this down right here. We'll say float. All right. So like I said, float stores whole numbers, and when you're making variables with float, you got to tell the computer and see that you're storing a float with a variable. So let's make a shopping list right here. We'll say float water. We'll say float water equals $2.99. Float fruit equals $10.97. We'll say float veggies equals $6.76. And one more. Let's say I have a healthy shopping list right now. Let's say float ice cream. Float ice cream is equal to, let's just say $5.54. Why not? All right, cool. So, and I'll add these all up right now, and I'll call float sum, and I'll say float sum equals water plus fruit plus veggies plus ice cream. All right. Awesome. So I'm going to print out what our total for the day is right now. So it's like printf. The total for the day was %f. All right. So you see, I have the %f right there. This is what you need for the placeholder for the float right there. So I'll say %f. Then after the quotes, I'll say I want to print out whatever the float sum is. So we'll say right here, make data. Hope it compiles correctly. It did. Let's see what our total was for the day. The total was 26.26. All right. So you see, floats can store numbers pretty precisely. So say I just want 2 decimal places for the 26 right now. I would say %.2f for the total right there. So I guess I include that, and we'll see the difference right there. I'll say make data, compiler will run it. The total of the day was 26.26. Okay, so if you put %, let's say .3, make data. The total for the day, this is even more precise, 26.0. So this just tells you how many decimal places that you want. All right, so the last data type, let's go over it right here. That I'm going to show you today. It's what's called a character. CHARACTER. And for a character, you just want to store a single character in it, basically. So in order to specify a variable in C, you got to name the character char. So I'm going to say character first initial equals, let's say, C. And when you're storing characters in this variable, you need to make sure that you're only putting a single quote. So if you use a double quote, it won't run correctly. So I'll say char last initial equals M. All right, so let's just print this out and see what happens right there. My initials are %C and %C. All right. So you see, as the placeholders for the characters are %C and %C. All right. So we'll pass these values right there. I'll say first initial, and I'll say last initial, and we'll hope it compiles correctly. Seems like everything's spelled all right. Make data, compile correctly. First. Oh, I didn't spell that correctly. INIT. Okay, there it is. IN. All right, this should be better now. Compiled right. My initials are CM. Awesome. So you just see how those characters are passed right there. The big thing with the characters are to always specify the data type with this keyword char right there, and never use double quotes. Always use a single quotes. So that there we do it. I think in later tutorials we'll be introduced to a little more advanced or different data types, but these are the three basic ones, or the major ones that you'll always be using in the C programming language. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you watching this video. Make sure to like, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will get to them to answer them. And I appreciate you for watching. See you in the next one. Thank you so much.